It was my third week living in a small town called Guardala. It wasn't even an option. The company I worked for had just opened a unit in that town, and as one of the senior employees, I was assigned to oversee the opening process. I was required to stay there for 3 to 4 months. Guardala wasn't a bad place. As a matter of fact, it was one of the quietest and most beautiful small towns I had ever been to. I enjoyed the peacefulness, the chirping sounds of birds, the flowing water in the river, and the rustling of trees swayed by the wind. The town had a charm that was both calming and eerie, a mix of old-world nostalgia and modern convenience. The apartment my company rented for me was about a 15-minute train ride away or a 45-minute trip by bus. So, when I had to work overtime until nearly midnight that day and there were no buses available, the only option left to go home was by train. I stood on the train station platform, raised my hand to check the time on my wristwatch, and wondered when the next train would arrive. It was 11:45 p.m., and I still saw a few people standing there, waiting for the last train. The station was dimly lit, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to move with an eerie grace. The air was cool, and the silence was occasionally broken by the distant hoot of an owl. Then, a few minutes later, precisely at 11:50 p.m., I saw an oncoming train entering the station. The train's headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the platform with a ghostly glow. The train's arrival was accompanied by a low, rumbling sound that seemed to echo through the night. There it is, I thought, feeling a mix of relief and apprehension. The train stopped and opened its doors with a hiss, like a giant beast exhaling. I looked around. There were about 5 or 6 other people, but no one seemed to move. They stood still, their faces pale under the harsh station lights. I was the only one who stepped inside. One of the ladies standing just a few meters from me looked startled when she saw me board the train. Her eyes widened, and she took a step back, as if she had seen a ghost. "Isn't this supposed to be the last train?" I wondered as I took a seat. The train car I was in wasn't full, which made sense since it was nearly midnight. But it was at least half occupied, which seemed odd for this late hour. The passengers were a mix of ages and backgrounds, but they all shared a common trait, a look of unease, as if they were all holding a secret they dared not speak. As I waited for the train to arrive at my station, I pulled out my phone to check if I had any messages from friends, family, or colleagues. There was one. It was from Caleb. Caleb was my co-worker. He was a local and had also worked overtime with me that night, but his place was just around the corner from the office. He was a friendly guy, always ready with a smile and a joke, but there was something about him that hinted at a deeper, more serious side. "Hey man," Caleb said in his text. "I don't know if anyone has ever told you this, but I guess it's better to tell you regardless. I forgot to mention it back at the office. The last train in this town is precisely at 12 o'clock midnight," Caleb continued. "The previous one is at 11:15 p.m. So, if you ever see a train arriving between 11:15 and 12 o'clock, do not board it." The message was sent at 11:10 p.m., right when I had just left the office. I felt a chill run down my spine as I read his words. "Why?" I asked, my fingers trembling slightly as I typed the message. Caleb replied quickly. "Let's just say there's an urban legend about it that's been around for generations. No one boards a train that arrives between 11:15 and 12 o'clock. Do not get on." Was that why the lady at the platform seemed startled when she saw me board? Did she know something I didn't? But why? "It's just a train," I texted back, trying to rationalize the situation. "I mean, I can just get off at the next station if it takes me the wrong way." "Why do you sound like you're already inside the train?" he asked, his message tinged with a sense of urgency. "I am," I replied, feeling a growing unease. "The train arrived at 11:50 p.m. and I hopped in. It's already departed." It took him a while to respond. Then he replied with only one word. "Shit." Okay. That was odd. Caleb was usually so calm and collected. What could possibly make him react like this? "Care to explain, Caleb?" I typed. But before I could send the message, my phone lost signal. No texts, no calls, no internet, nothing. The screen flickered and then went dark, leaving me in a state of isolation. Weird. I looked out the window and noticed something strange. I had taken this train countless times, but never once had I seen mountains through the windows. Guardala was a beach town. It didn't even have a single mountain. The landscape outside was unfamiliar, almost alien. The train seemed to be traveling through a world that was both familiar and yet completely unknown. I had no idea where the train was headed, but it didn't seem like I had any other options. So I remained seated, my mind racing with questions and fears. I looked out the window again and saw a tunnel ahead. Within minutes, the train entered. Pitch darkness. Apart from the dim lighting inside the train, there was nothing. No lights, no signs. The tunnel seemed to stretch on forever, an endless void of darkness. Then I felt the train slowing down. Slowly, slowly, until I saw the light ahead at the end of the tunnel. It was a faint, flickering light, like a beacon in the darkness. I didn't know why, but I had a bad feeling. The light seemed to pulse with an eerie energy, as if it was alive. The moment the train exited the tunnel, I immediately saw a train station. That should have been a good thing. But something about the station looked eerie wrong. The station's walls, pillars and ceilings were decorated with jagged rocks, as if it had been built inside a cave. The train slowed down more and more until it eventually stopped. I looked out the window. There were people standing on the platform as if they were waiting to board. But there was something off about them. Their faces were blank, their eyes empty. They stood still, like statues, waiting for something to happen. The moment the train stopped and the doors opened, an earthquake suddenly struck. The station's walls and floor cracked open, and from those cracks, flames burst out. The station turned scorching hot. It felt like hell. The air was thick with the smell of sulfur and the sound of distant screams. The passengers inside the train erupted in chilling cries. They screamed in horror, realizing what was about to befall them. The train car filled with the sound of their terror, a symphony of fear that seemed to echo through the station. Then, just seconds after the flames burst from the cracks, the people standing on the platform transformed. They became monstrous 3 meters tall, with red skin and golden horns protruding from their heads. Demons. Their eyes glowed with a malevolent light, and their mouths were filled with rows of sharp teeth. The passengers screamed even louder. The sound of their terror was deafening, a cacophony of fear that seemed to shake the very foundations of the station. 3 demons stood in front of my train car. Each one smashed a window, grabbed a passenger by the head, yanked them through the broken glass, and hurled them into the fiery cracks. The passengers struggled, their screams of agony echoing through the station. But one of the demons walked up and shoved their heads deeper into the fire. In seconds they were gone. Consumed by fear, I instinctively ran out the train's door and past the demons, who were too busy grabbing and throwing people into the flaming cracks to notice me. I had no idea what lay beyond the platform, full of enraged demons, but staying there wasn't an option. So I ran through the station of hell. The next chamber I entered was even worse. People were being punched to pieces by the same kind of demons I had seen earlier, but they didn't die. Seconds after being torn apart, their bodies regenerated only to be shattered again, over and over. The sound of their screams filled the air, a never-ending symphony of pain and suffering. Was there any way out of this hellish place? Anything at all? I didn't stop running, despite witnessing countless forms of human torture around me. Strangely, none of the demons seemed to pay attention to me. Or so I thought. Then, without warning, a giant red hand grabbed me by the torso. It was one of the demons. Its grip was like a vice, crushing the air out of my lungs. This is the end of me, I thought. The demon lifted me to its eye level, staring intently, as if trying to observe me. I braced myself, expecting it to bite my head off. Instead, it let out a deafening growl right in my face. It growled so loud, so close, it felt like my eardrums were about to explode. Then, unexpectedly, the demon raised its arm still, in its grasp and hurled me back toward the train platform. I crashed into the jagged ceiling before plummeting hard to the ground. Pain shot through my entire body. It felt like some of my bones were fractured, if not already broken. but I forced myself up, thinking of trying to run past the demon, hoping for another way out. It growled again. Then it charged at me. What choice did I have? None. I turned and ran back to the train. It was still there, its door open. I sprinted as fast as my battered body allowed, diving inside just as the demon reached the threshold. But it didn't follow me in. It stopped right outside the train's door. It didn't try to step in. It didn't even try to reach for me. It just stood there, silently. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent light, but it made no move to enter the train. I took a look around. The car was empty. No one else was there. All of the passengers had been thrown into the fiery cracks. All of them. No one was left, no one but me. Yet none of the demons tried to take me. Not a single one. From the next train car, I heard the same blood-curdling screams. It was happening there too. The sound of their terror was deafening, a symphony of fear that seemed to shake the very foundations of the train. When the demons were done, silence fell. The station was quiet, the only sound the distant rumble of the train's engine. Then, as if nothing had happened, the demons transformed back into human forms. All the cracks were reversed and disappeared. The fire was gone. The train station's platform returned to normal. It was as if the entire horrifying scene had never happened. Seconds later, the train doors closed, and the train departed. I was alive, but what the hell was that? I stayed in my seat, waiting for the train to stop at the next station. I didn't know where it would take me, but it could be worse than the last one. The train seemed to travel through a world that was both familiar and yet completely unknown. The landscape outside was unfamiliar, almost alien. Minutes passed, though it felt like an eternity. Then, finally, the train arrived at another station. It looked familiar. It was the station near my office, the very place where I had boarded the cursed train. As soon as the doors opened, I wasted no time. I leaped onto the platform. The moment I stepped off, the train pulled away, disappearing into the darkness. I looked around. No one was there. The station was deserted, the only sound the distant hoot of an owl. I remembered a large digital clock hanging near the platform, 12:01 a.m. Everything I had just experienced had lasted only 11 minutes, but it felt like forever. Then my phone vibrated. The signal had returned. It was a message from Caleb. "Well, I can't really tell you for sure where that train goes," he wrote. "I honestly don't know. The legend has been around for generations. Some of our great-grandparents accidentally boarded Itand, thankfully, returned to tell the story. They said the train took them to hell, or something like it. But that was generations ago," he continued. "We all know there shouldn't be any trains between 11:15 and 12 o'clock, so no one dares to board one even if they see it. I've seen it a few times," he admitted, "but I never got on, and I never planned to." I thought that was his last message. But then another one came. "So I don't know if the train actually goes to hell or not." I tapped the reply button on my chat app and responded to Caleb. "It does." I stood there for a moment, the weight of what I had just experienced pressing down on me. The station was quiet, the only sound the distant rumble of the train's engine. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I had survived, but the memory of what I had seen would haunt me forever. As I walked away from the station, I couldn't help but look back over my shoulder, half expecting to see the train again, but it was gone, swallowed up by the darkness. I quickened my pace, eager to put as much distance between myself and the cursed train as possible. The walk home was a blur, the streets were deserted, the only sound the distant hoot of an owl. I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting to see the train again, but it was gone, swallowed up by the darkness. As I approached my apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The memory of what I had seen would haunt me forever. I unlocked the door and stepped inside, the weight of what I had just experienced pressing down on me. I collapsed onto the couch, my body aching from the ordeal. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the memories of the demons and the fiery cracks. But they were burned into my mind, a constant reminder of the horror I had witnessed. As I lay there, I couldn't help but wonder what would have happened if I hadn't boarded the train. Would I have been spared the nightmare? Or was it inevitable, a part of the town's dark legacy that I was destined to experience? I didn't know the answers. All I knew was that I had survived, and that was enough for now. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. The memory of what I had seen would haunt me forever, but I had survived, and that was enough for now.